At 2:47 a.m., my phone lit up with my husband's message. "I'm at Claire's house. Pick me up or it's over." My heart pounded as I stared at those words. 3 years of marriage, and this was what it came to, an ultimatum via text. I typed 6 words that would change everything. "It's over then. Goodbye, Jack." 1 minute later, I forwarded his location to Claire's husband, Nathan. By morning, Jack was on my doorstep, teary, desperate, and homeless. That's when I, Darcy Williams, realized peace tastes better than revenge. 5 years ago, I never would have predicted that a summer internship at Horizon Marketing would change my life forever. That's where I met Jack Harrison, tall, confident, with a smile that made my knees weak. He was the golden boy of the financial department, and I was just a wide-eyed college graduate trying to find my place in the professional world. "Darcy, right?" he said, approaching my desk on my 3rd day. "Some of us are grabbing drinks after work. You should join." The way he looked at me made me feel special, seen. By the end of that night, laughing over margaritas and sharing stories about our childhoods in different corners of America, his in Boston, mine in Seattle, I knew something extraordinary was happening between us. Our romance was a whirlwind. Weekend trips to the coast, surprise picnics, handwritten notes left on my windshield. 6 months later, he proposed at sunset on Cannon Beach, and I didn't hesitate to say yes. The wedding was everything I dreamed of, bare feet on the sand, surrounded by 60 of our closest friends and family. My father cried as he walked me down the makeshift aisle, whispering that Jack was a lucky man. We settled into a charming two-story home in the suburbs of Portland, a starter house, Jack called it, the kind of place where we could build our future together. I landed a job teaching 2nd grade at Pinewood Elementary, while Jack climbed the corporate ladder at Westridge Financial Services. We planted a garden, adopted a golden retriever named Cooper, and talked about having children someday, not right away, but soon. Life seemed perfect, especially when we met Nathan and Claire Taylor at a neighborhood block party during our 2nd year in the house. They lived just 3 streets over. Claire was a pharmaceutical sales representative, Nathan an architect with his own small firm. We clicked immediately, the 4 of us, laughing over barbecue and comparing homeowner horror stories. "We should do this again," Claire suggested as the evening wound down. She was striking, tall and blonde, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. "Dinner at our place next Friday?" That dinner turned into a monthly tradition, then weekly get-togethers. Claire and I started morning jogs together, followed by coffee at the local cafe. She was easy to talk to, a good listener. When I mentioned wanting to redecorate our guest bedroom, she offered to help, claiming she had an eye for these things. Jack and Nathan bonded over their shared love of hiking and craft beer. "I'm glad we found couple friends," Jack said one night as we drove home from the Taylors. "They're good people." Looking back, I should have noticed the subtle shifts earlier. The late nights at the office that grew more frequent. The way Jack's phone never left his side. How he stepped out to take calls, claiming they were from clients or his boss, but I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner, the man I planned to grow old with. I tried to keep our connection strong. I surprised him at work with lunch, planned date nights at our favorite restaurants, wore the lingerie he liked. When those efforts yielded little response, I blamed it on his stress about an upcoming promotion. "Just hang in there," he'd say, kissing my forehead absently. "Once this quarter ends, things will calm down." Our 3rd wedding anniversary arrived on a rainy April evening. I made reservations at Riverside, the upscale restaurant where we'd celebrated our engagement. Jack was distant throughout dinner, checking his phone repeatedly under the table. "Is everything okay?" I asked, reaching for his hand across the candlelit table. "You seem distracted." "Sorry, just work stuff," he muttered, but his expression softened when his phone chimed with a new message. He glanced down and smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen all evening. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Jack hesitated, then turned his phone toward me. "It's Claire. We're planning a surprise for Nathan's birthday next month. I scanned the message quickly. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. N will be gone all day. Thinking about what you said last night. XO. My stomach tightened. That sounds friendly. Jack laughed, taking his phone back. Claire's just expressive like that. She's excited about the gift we picked out, a custom drafting table for his home office. She's a good friend, Darcy. To both of us. I nodded, ignoring the unease settling in my chest. After all, Claire was my friend too. We had coffee just yesterday, talking about her latest work trip and my troublesome class parent. She'd even asked about Jack, wondering if he was feeling better after catching what she called that bug going around. As we drove home, Jack reached over and squeezed my hand. Happy anniversary, babe. I love you. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So I pushed aside the nagging doubt and smiled back. I love you too. What I didn't realize then was that moment at Riverside marked the beginning of the end. The text that made him smile wasn't about Nathan's birthday surprise. It was the first concrete clue in a trail of betrayal that would eventually lead to that fateful 2:47 a.m. message that changed everything. The changes in our marriage became impossible to ignore in the months following our anniversary dinner. Small criticisms from Jack grew more frequent. That dress doesn't really flatter you, does it? Or maybe you should try a different hairstyle. Comments that seemed innocuous on their own, but formed a pattern that slowly chipped away at my confidence. Our bedroom, once a place of intimacy and connection, became a cold, silent space. Jack always had an excuse: too tired, too stressed, early meeting tomorrow. When I initiated, he would sigh and reluctantly participate, leaving me feeling unwanted and hollow afterward. Is there something wrong with us? I asked one night, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. You barely touch me anymore. Don't be dramatic, Darcy, he replied, his back to me. Not everything is about sex. I'm just going through a lot at work right now. Claire's behavior changed too. Our morning jogs became interrogation sessions, thinly disguised as friendly chats. So, is Jack working late again tonight? She asked during one run, her ponytail swinging as we rounded the corner by the park. Until 8, probably. There's a client presentation tomorrow. She nodded thoughtfully. Nathan's been slammed too. I barely see him these days. A pause. What do you guys usually do on Friday nights? Any traditions or anything? The questions continued throughout our friendship. What time Jack usually came home, whether we had plans for specific weekends, if we ever checked each other's phones. At first, I thought nothing of it, simply a friend making conversation. Later, I would understand she was mapping out my life, finding the gaps where she could insert herself. Jack began suggesting double dates with the Taylors with unusual frequency. Claire mentioned that new Italian place downtown, he'd say. Should I text them about Saturday? Again? We just saw them last weekend. Come on, they're our friends. And Nathan's been asking about that hiking trail I told him about. During these outings, I caught moments that made my skin prickle. Claire's hand lingering on Jack's arm as she laughed at his joke, their eyes meeting across the table, while Nathan and I discussed a book we'd both read. Small moments, easily dismissed individually, yet unsettling when pieced together. After one such dinner, Nathan mentioned Claire's new commitment to fitness. These yoga classes are really something, he said as we waited for our cars with the valet. 3 nights a week, sometimes doesn't get home until after 10. But she seems happier, so that's good, right? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Those yoga nights perfectly aligned with Jack's late meetings. At home, I started keeping a journal, documenting inconsistencies in Jack's stories. Told me he was having lunch with his boss, but his boss called the house looking for him. Said he was stuck in traffic, but the traffic report showed all clear roads. Claimed to be at the gym, but came home without shower-damp hair. When I gently raised these discrepancies, Jack's reactions were always the same: dismissive laughter followed by plausible explanations, then growing anger if I pressed further. Are you seriously keeping tabs on me? What's next? Hiring a private investigator, he snapped, after I questioned why his gym clothes weren't in the laundry basket. This jealousy isn't attractive, Darcy. I thought you were more secure than this. His words made me question myself. Was I being paranoid? Unreasonably jealous? I apologized, promised to work on my insecurities, tried to be the understanding wife he wanted. But the doubt had taken root, growing stronger with each passing day. The neighborhood barbecue at the Andersons' house became the turning point. It was a beautiful June afternoon, families mingling in the backyard, the air filled with the scent of grilled burgers and the sound of children playing. Jack was uncharacteristically attentive, keeping his arm around my waist, bringing me drinks, introducing me to people from his office with genuine pride in his voice. "I'm going to grab another beer. Want anything?" he asked, kissing my cheek before wandering toward the drinks table. A few minutes later, my phone died mid-conversation with Amy from across the street about the neighborhood watch program. I spotted Jack's phone on the patio table where we'd been sitting and reached for it, intending to check the time. As the screen lit up, a notification appeared. From Claire. "Can't stop thinking about yesterday. Nathan's away next Tuesday." The message preview cut off there, disappearing before I could read more. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, trying to process what I'd just seen. When Jack returned, I confronted him immediately, my voice low but intense. "I just saw a text from Claire on your phone. Something about yesterday and Nathan being away next Tuesday." Jack's expression flickered between surprise and what looked like fear, before settling into casual dismissal. "Oh, that. She's planning a surprise anniversary thing for Nathan. Asked me to help set it up while he's at that conference in Seattle. She wants to redecorate his home office as a gift." He took a swig of beer. "She made me promise not to tell anyone, especially you because you and Nathan talk. Can you keep it secret? It would really ruin the surprise otherwise." The explanation was perfect. Too perfect. Delivered too smoothly. Yet what choice did I have but to nod and pretend to believe him? To do otherwise would make me the irrational, jealous wife he'd already accused me of being. "Sure," I agreed, forcing a smile. "Their anniversary is coming up, isn't it?" "Next month," Jack confirmed, squeezing my hand gratefully. "Thanks for understanding. Claire would kill me if I ruined the surprise." That night, I lay awake beside my sleeping husband, replaying the text in my mind. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. What had happened yesterday? According to Jack, he'd worked late, then met some colleagues for a quick drink. According to Claire, when I ran into her at the grocery store, she'd spent the evening helping her sister shop for a wedding dress. Another inconsistency to add to my growing collection. Another reason to doubt everything I thought I knew about my marriage and my friendships. Another crack in the foundation of the life I'd built with such hope and trust. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning, that the truth was far worse than anything I had imagined. But something shifted inside me at that barbecue, a quiet resolve taking root beneath the hurt and confusion. If Jack and Claire were hiding something, I would find out what it was, no matter how painful the discovery might be. "I think Jack is having an affair with Claire," I blurted out to my sister Madeline over coffee the following week. We sat in her sunny kitchen, far from my neighborhood where gossiping neighbors might overhear. Madeline set down her mug, studying my face. Unlike me with my dark hair and green eyes, she'd inherited our father's auburn curls and direct manner. "What makes you think that?" I told her everything, the suspicious texts, the matching late nights, the subtle touches, Jack's increasing criticism and distance. As I spoke, the evidence sounded more damning out loud than it had in my head. "Trust your gut, Darcy," Madeline said, when I finished. "It's telling you something's wrong for a reason. You're not crazy or paranoid." Her validation was like oxygen after months of suffocation. Someone believed me. Someone wasn't dismissing my concerns or suggesting I was imagining things. "What should I do?" I asked, fighting back tears. "First, protect yourself. Financially, and emotionally. If he is cheating, he's already shown he doesn't have your best interests at heart. I took her advice, beginning with a careful review of our finances. The discoveries came quickly after that. Credit card statements showed charges at Montello's, an upscale restaurant downtown, on nights Jack claimed to be working late. A jewelry store purchase for $350 2 days before Valentine's Day. I'd received chocolates and flowers, nothing more. Then came the morning I found a receipt in his suit pocket while doing laundry. La Belle Vie Hotel, a boutique place downtown. Dated 3 weeks ago, when he'd supposedly been at a client dinner. Room service for 2, champagne, a charge for late checkout. His phone became Fort Knox. The password, once shared freely between us, changed suddenly. Just work security protocols, he claimed with a shrug. Everyone had to update their passwords. When I asked why I couldn't have the new one, he accused me of not trusting him. The final confirmation came from an unexpected source. Tina, a fellow teacher who lived downtown, texted me one Tuesday afternoon. Just saw Jack having lunch with a blonde woman at Riverside. Aren't you guys free for parent conferences this week? Thought you might be joining them. I wasn't. I was sitting in my classroom during my lunch break, eating a sandwich alone, while my husband dined at our special restaurant with a woman who matched Claire's description. When confronted, Jack claimed it was a client meeting, growing angry when I mentioned Tina's text. Are you having your friends spy on me now? This is insane, Darcy. I can't work and constantly worry about who might report back to my paranoid wife. The gaslighting only intensified as my evidence mounted. He'd twist situations, deny conversations we'd had, claim I'd agreed to things I hadn't. More than once, I found myself apologizing for being upset about his behavior, somehow transformed into the villain of our story. I'm worried about you, he said during one argument, his voice softening to concerned. Maybe you should talk to someone. This jealousy, these accusations, it's not healthy. Ironically, his suggestion led me to the one thing that helped me reclaim my sanity. I started seeing Dr. Patterson, a therapist specializing in relationships. I initially went believing I needed help managing my irrational jealousy. Instead, I found validation and clarity. What you're describing sounds like gaslighting, Dr. Patterson said during our third session. It's a form of emotional manipulation that makes you question your own reality. So I'm not imagining things? Based on what you've shared, your concerns seem entirely legitimate. The question now is, what do you want to do with this awareness? What did I want? The question haunted me. Part of me still loved the man I thought Jack was, still clung to the possibility that there was an explanation for everything. Another part knew our marriage was built on quicksand, sinking further with each passing day. Jack's subtle financial threats didn't help my indecision. Marriage is about compromise, he said one night after I questioned another late return home. If you can't handle the demands of my career, maybe we need to reconsider things. Though I don't know how you'd manage on a teacher's salary. This house, your car, our lifestyle, it all costs money, Darcy. The implied threat was clear. Leave me and suffer. It was effective, too, keeping me silent and compliant longer than I should have been. Everything changed on a rainy Saturday in October. Jack was golfing with clients, a rare weekend appearance for work. I used the opportunity to organize our home office, gathering documents for the upcoming tax season. In the filing cabinet, behind folders of old bank statements, I found papers I'd never seen before, a second mortgage on our house, taken out 3 months earlier. $50,000, with my signature neatly forged at the bottom. I sat on the office floor, surrounded by paper evidence, as the full weight of the betrayal crashed over me. This wasn't just an affair, this was financial fraud. My husband had not only cheated on me emotionally, and likely physically he'd stolen from me, putting our shared future at risk without my knowledge or consent. The money was nowhere in our joint accounts, No major purchases had been made, no renovations to the house, no investments I was aware of. Just $50,000 vanished. When Jack returned home that evening, I'd already hidden the documents and composed myself. I watched him move around our kitchen, chatting about his golf game, completely unaware that I'd discovered his secret. In that moment, I saw him clearly for the first time in months, a stranger wearing my husband's face. A liar. A thief. That night, I lay beside him in bed, listening to his steady breathing, and made a decision. I would fight back not with accusations or confrontations, but with careful, methodical preparation. If Jack wanted war, I would arm myself appropriately. The next morning, I called the number Madeline had given me weeks earlier, a divorce attorney named Laura Bennett, who specialized in cases involving financial deception. The wheels of my liberation had begun to turn, though Jack wouldn't know it for weeks to come. Not until that fateful text at 2:47 a.m. "The most important thing right now is documentation," Laura Bennett said during our first meeting at her downtown office. She was a formidable woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and reading glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. "We need to establish a pattern of deception, both emotional and financial." I nodded, already feeling more in control than I had in months. Where do I start? Bank records, credit card statements, text messages, anything that shows inconsistencies in his stories or evidence of the affair. And Darcy? She leaned forward, her expression grave. "What he did with that second mortgage is fraud, plain and simple, but we need to be strategic about how we use that information." Armed with Laura's advice, I became a detective in my own home. While Jack was showering one morning, I managed to install a tracking app on his phone using an old password he'd forgotten to change on his cloud account. Each night after he fell asleep, I would check his location history against where he claimed to have been that day. The pattern was unmistakable. Twice weekly, his location showed him at an address I didn't recognize in the West Hills, an upscale neighborhood across town. He was never there for less than 2 hours. Those visits corresponded perfectly with his late meetings or drinks with clients. I drove by the address once during my lunch break. It was a luxury apartment complex with a doorman and underground parking. I didn't go in. I wasn't ready for a confrontation, but I took photos, adding them to my growing file of evidence. The financial trail was equally damning. I discreetly ordered copies of all our financial statements going back 18 months. The money from the second mortgage had been transferred to an account I knew nothing about. Jack had opened it 6 months earlier with just his name, a clear preparation for whatever he was planning. My next step was harder emotionally, but necessary. I set up a small camera in our home office, hidden among the books on the shelf. It was technically our shared space, making the recording legal, according to Laura. 3 days later, I had what I needed: footage of Jack on the phone, pacing the office. I know, he said to the caller, his voice low. "It's complicated. Yes, I'm still figuring out the timeline." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. By spring, I promise. I'll have everything in place by then." A pause. "I miss you too, Claire. This sneaking around is killing me." I watched the video 5 times, each viewing strengthening my resolve. There it was, undeniable proof in his own words. My husband and my friend, plotting something behind my back, something that involved a timeline, my ignorance, and apparently the $50,000 from our home. What I hadn't anticipated was running into Nathan at Wilcox Grocery the following Tuesday. I was in the produce section, examining avocados, when I heard his familiar voice. "Darcy, hey, how've you been?" I turned to find Nathan's friendly face, his cart filled with bachelor essentials, frozen meals, cereal, beer. "Just grabbing some things while Claire's away," he explained, noticing my glance at his cart. "Girls' weekend in Napa. Left yesterday, back Friday." My heart skipped. Jack had left yesterday for what he'd claimed was a financial advisors conference in San Francisco, back Friday. "That's nice," I managed. Jack's at a conference this week too. Work stuff. Nathan nodded, seemingly unaware of the bomb he'd just dropped. We should do dinner next week when they're both back. It's been too long. It has, I agreed, my mind racing. I'll check with Jack and text Claire. As soon as I was in my car, I checked the tracking app. Jack's phone placed him in Napa Valley, California at the Vineyard Resort and Spa. Not San Francisco, not at a financial conference. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I could no longer deny or rationalize away. Claire and Jack weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future together. The secret account, the second mortgage, the timeline he'd mentioned, it all pointed to an exit strategy. Even more painful was the realization that many of our mutual friends likely knew or suspected the truth. The sympathetic glances, the awkward pauses when I mentioned Jack's work hours, the invitations that had slowed over recent months, all made sense now. I was the last to know about my own marriage's demise. That evening, I had dinner with Madeline, updating her on everything I'd discovered. You need to confront him, she said, her protective older sister instincts flaring. With everything you know. When he gets back from his little love vacation, I'm going to, I assured her. Laura says I have enough now to file for divorce with a strong case for financial fraud. She's drawing up the papers this week. What I didn't tell Madeline was the hollow ache beneath my determination. Despite everything, part of me still mourned for what we'd had for the man I thought I'd married, for the future we'd planned together. That grief existed alongside my anger and resolve, complicated emotions tangling inside me. I spent the next 2 days finalizing my preparations. I opened a separate bank account in only my name. I made copies of all important documents and stored them at Madeline's. I researched apartments, plotting a quick exit if needed. I was as ready as I could be for the confrontation to come when Jack returned. What I wasn't prepared for was how events would unfold on their own timeline, catalyzed by a text I never expected to receive. The universe had its own plans for revealing the truth, arriving in the form of another unexpected message. My phone pinged Thursday evening as I was grading papers at the kitchen table. It was from Bridget, a former college roommate who now worked at the concierge desk of the Paramount Hotel downtown. Hey Darcy, weird question, is Jack in town this week? I swear I just saw him checking in with a blonde woman. Didn't want to say hi in case I'm mistaken or interrupting something work-related. Attached was a discreetly taken photo showing Jack's back as he stood at the reception desk, his arm around Claire's waist, her blonde head leaning against his shoulder. The final piece of evidence. The undeniable, visual proof that everything I'd suspected was true. I texted back, "You're not mistaken, and it's not work-related. Thank you, Bridget. I needed to know this." That night, I finalized my confrontation strategy. I would show Jack everything I knew when he returned tomorrow: the tracking data, the financial records, the video, and now, this photo. There would be no more gaslighting, no more lies. It would be the end of our marriage on my terms, with my dignity intact. Or so I thought. But fate had a different confrontation in mind, one that would begin with a desperate text at 2:47 a.m. and end with a revelation that would change everything. The plan was set. I would confront Jack when he returned from his conference the next day. My sister Madeline would come over for moral support. Laura, my attorney, was on standby for legal guidance. The divorce papers were prepared, needing only my final approval to file. I tried to sleep that night, knowing I needed rest for the emotional battle ahead, but my mind raced with rehearsed speeches and imagined scenarios. Would he deny everything, despite the evidence? Try to blame me somehow? Beg forgiveness? I prepared responses for every possibility, determined to remain strong regardless of his tactics. Around 1 a.m, I gave up on sleep and went downstairs. Cooper, our golden retriever, followed loyally, sensing my distress. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the timeline of betrayal I'd constructed. The second mortgage, the secret account, the work meetings that were actually rendezvous with Claire, the conference that was actually a romantic getaway in wine country. How had I missed the signs for so long? The question haunted me, though Dr. Patterson had helped me understand it wasn't my fault. Gaslighting works by making you doubt your own perceptions until your abuser's reality becomes yours. Jack had been masterful at it, making me feel unstable for questioning his increasingly obvious lies. At 2:47 a.m., my phone lit up with a notification. Jack's name appeared on the screen, sending my heart racing. Why was he texting in the middle of the night? I opened the message. "I'm at Claire's house. Pick me up or it's over." I stared at those words, trying to make sense of them. Jack was supposed to be in Napa with Claire. The tracking app confirmed his phone was indeed at the Taylor's address. But why was he there? Why the ultimatum? My mind raced through possibilities. Had they fought? Had he discovered I knew about the affair? Was this some bizarre test of my loyalty? For 3 years I had bent to Jack's will. I had accepted his criticisms, believed his lies, doubted my own instincts. I had shrunk myself to fit the increasingly narrow space he allowed me to occupy in our marriage. Not anymore. With steady hands, I typed my response. "It's over then. Goodbye, Jack." 6 simple words that broke the chains of manipulation that had bound me for too long. I sat in the stillness that followed, expecting pain or regret. Instead, I felt an unfamiliar lightness, as though I'd set down a heavy burden I'd been carrying for years. 1 minute passed. Then another realization struck me. Nathan deserved to know the truth. With that clarity came action. I forwarded Jack's location from the tracking app to Nathan's phone with a simple message. "Jack is at your house with Claire. I thought you should know." What happened next was beyond my control. I imagined Nathan's confusion upon receiving my text, then his growing anger as understanding dawned. I pictured him rushing home from wherever he was, confronting the betrayal happening under his own roof. Part of me wanted to be there to witness it, the unmasking of their deception. But a wiser part knew this was not my battle to witness. Instead, I changed the locks. Thankfully, Madeline had suggested purchasing a new deadbolt just in case weeks earlier. It had sat in my closet, waiting for this moment. At 3 in the morning, I installed it myself, following a YouTube tutorial, and feeling a surge of empowerment with each turn of the screwdriver. By 4, the new lock was in place. I called Madeline despite the hour. "It's happening," I told her when she answered groggily. "Jack's at Claire's. I told him it's over. I changed the locks." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she replied, instantly alert. "Don't open the door for him if he shows up." While waiting for Madeline, I received a series of increasingly frantic texts from Jack. "What do you mean it's over? You can't be serious. Answer your phone, Darcy. What did you say to Nathan? Everything is falling apart here. This is all a misunderstanding." I didn't respond to any of them. Each message only confirmed what I already knew. The carefully constructed house of lies was collapsing around him. My phone rang Nathan's number. I hesitated before answering. "Is it true?" His voice was raw with emotion. "How long have you known?" "I've suspected for months," I admitted. "Had proof for weeks." "I'm so sorry, Nathan." He laughed bitterly. "I'm the one who's sorry. Claire admitted everything when I confronted them. They've been having an affair for 14 months, Darcy. 14 months of lying to our faces." The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 14 months ago, Jack and I had been discussing having a baby. While I was tracking my ovulation and reading parenting books, he was beginning an affair with my friend. "There's more," Nathan continued, his voice dropping. "They bought property together, some vacation home on the coast. Used money from a second mortgage on your house, apparently." "I know about the mortgage," I said quietly. "Not about the property. And Darcy." He paused. "Claire's pregnant, 4 months along. She claims she doesn't know which one of us. But the timing." His voice broke. We haven't been intimate in months. The revelation should have devastated me. Strangely, it brought clarity instead. The final confirmation that my marriage was truly over had been over long before this night. What happens now? I asked. I kicked them both out. Claire's staying with her sister, Jack. I don't know where he went. Probably a hotel. Thank you for telling me, Nathan. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen as dawn broke, casting long shadows across the floor. Madeline arrived, bringing coffee and her unwavering support. We sat together in silence for a while, watching the sunrise through the kitchen window. Are you okay? She finally asked. No, I answered honestly, but I will be. The doorbell rang at 7:30 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Jack disheveled, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his eyes red and desperate. Don't open it, Madeline warned. I won't, I assured her. But I need to face him. Through the door. I approached the door but didn't unlock it. Go away, Jack. Darcy, please. His voice was hoarse. Let me explain. This is all a huge misunderstanding. Is it? The affair with Claire? The second mortgage? The secret property? The baby? Which part is the misunderstanding exactly? His silence confirmed everything. I've changed the locks, I continued. Laura Bennett has already filed for divorce. Any communication needs to go through her from now on. You can't do this, he protested, his tone shifting from pleading to angry. This is my house, too. The house you stole $50,000 from? The house you were planning to abandon once your exit strategy was in place? That house? I felt Madeline's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. You made your choice, Jack. Now live with it. I'll be back, he threatened. With the police. Go ahead, I called through the door. I'd be happy to explain the forged signature on the mortgage documents to them. His footsteps retreated down the walkway, followed by the sound of his car starting and driving away. I turned to Madeline, surprised to find I wasn't crying. Instead, I felt a curious sense of peace beneath the turmoil, a certainty that I had done the right thing, not just for now, but for my future. What happens next? Madeline asked, echoing my earlier question to Nathan. I rebuild, I replied simply. One day at a time. What I couldn't have known then was just how chaotic that rebuilding process would become, or that the confrontation at 2:47 a.m. was just the beginning of a story that would ultimately lead to my freedom. By noon, my phone was a battlefield of notifications. Jack had cycled through every emotional manipulation tactic in his arsenal: rage, self, pity, gaslighting, and now, desperate pleading. I forwarded each message to Laura without responding, following her legal advice to maintain a record while limiting direct communication. Madeline stayed with me, fielding calls from concerned friends who had witnessed the unfolding drama through the neighborhood grapevine. Apparently, Nathan's confrontation with Jack and Claire had been loud enough to wake several neighbors. Everyone's taking sides, Madeline reported, hanging up from yet another call. Most are with you and Nathan, but Claire's sister is telling people it was all Jack's fault that he manipulated Claire. Does it matter? I asked. Suddenly exhausted by the soap opera my life had become, they both betrayed people who loved them. Around 2 in the afternoon, Nathan texted asking if he could stop by. When he arrived 30 minutes later, the man at my door barely resembled the confident architect I'd known. His eyes were shadowed, his clothes rumpled, his usual easy smile replaced by a grim determination. I brought these, he said, holding up a folder. Thought they might help your case. Inside were printouts of text messages, hotel receipts, and photos Nathan had been gathering for months, his own evidence collection that mirrored mine. You knew? I asked, scanning the damning documents. I suspected since March, he admitted as we sat in my living room. Found some text messages on Claire's iPad. Started keeping track after that, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Clearly, I wasn't. We compared timelines, filling in gaps in each other's knowledge. Nathan had witnessed conversations I hadn't. I had financial evidence he lacked. Together, we assembled a complete picture of the betrayal stretching back 14 months. They were planning to leave us in spring, Nathan explained. After the coastal property was fully renovated, Jack told Claire he was going to claim job burnout, ask for a trial separation. Meanwhile, they'd already set up life together. He laughed bitterly. They even had a cover story for how they reconnected after our divorces. The calculated nature of their betrayal stunned me. This wasn't a passionate affair that had spiraled out of control. This was methodical, premeditated deception. Our conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Through the window, I spotted Jack's car pulling into my driveway. He was alone, pacing beside his vehicle, running his hands through his hair in that way he did when agitated. "Should I leave?" Nathan asked. "No," I decided. "Let's face this together." I opened the front door but remained in the doorway, blocking entry. Jack looked terrible, his designer clothes wrinkled, stubble, darkening his usually clean, shaven jaw, eyes bloodshot. "Darcy, please," he began, then spotted Nathan behind me. His expression hardened. "What's he doing here?" "Comparing notes," I replied calmly. "Turns out you and Claire weren't as clever as you thought." "This isn't what you think," Jack insisted, lowering his voice. "Claire misled me too. She said her marriage was basically over, that Nathan was controlling, that she was afraid to leave him directly." Behind me, Nathan laughed. "Funny, she told me you were planning to divorce Darcy because she couldn't have children." The casual cruelty of that lie stole my breath. Jack and I had decided together to wait on starting a family. He'd been the one suggesting we enjoy our freedom a little longer. "She's lying," Jack said quickly. "I never said that. Darcy, you have to believe me. Claire manipulated both of us." "Convenient that it's all her fault now," I observed. "Where is she, anyway?" "Her sister's," Jack muttered. "She won't answer my calls either." "So, you're homeless," I stated, not a question. "I need to come home, Darcy. This is my house, too. We can work through this if you'd just listen." "Your name is on the mortgage you forged my signature on," I corrected him. "The mortgage fraud I've already reported to the bank." "This conversation is over, Jack. Everything else goes through Laura." I moved to close the door, but Jack blocked it with his foot. "Don't do this," he warned, his tone shifting from pleading to threatening. "You have no idea what you're getting into. A divorce will drain both of us financially. Is that what you want? To end up with nothing?" "I already have nothing," I replied steadily. "You made sure of that." Before Jack could respond, another car pulled into the driveway. Claire emerged, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her designer sunglasses failing to hide her swollen eyes. "What are you doing here?" Jack called to her, momentarily distracted. Claire marched up my walkway, ignoring Jack entirely, her focus lasered on me. "You had no right," she hissed. "No right to send Nathan that text. Do you have any idea what you've done? 2 marriages destroyed because you couldn't handle Jack working late sometimes?" Her audacity was breathtaking. In that moment, surrounded by 3 people whose lives were entangled in betrayal, something inside me broke free. The last traces of self-doubt vanished, replaced by a righteous anger I'd suppressed for too long. 2 marriages destroyed because you and Jack were having an affair for over a year, I corrected her, my voice carrying across the front lawn where neighbors had begun to gather, drawn by the commotion. Because you helped him steal $50,000 from our home. Because you both lied, repeatedly, to people who trusted you. Claire blanched. "Keep your voice down." "Why should I? You didn't seem concerned about discretion when you were meeting my husband in hotels, or planning your future in our coastal love nest, or deciding which lies to tell each of us." The confrontation had drawn a small audience, neighbors, pretending to check their mail or walk their dogs while watching the drama unfold. I no longer cared who witnessed this moment. The shame wasn't mine to carry. "You don't understand," Claire tried again. "It's complicated." "No, It's actually quite simple, Nathan interjected, stepping forward to stand beside me. You both cheated. You both lied. You both planned to discard us when convenient. Now you're both facing the consequences. Jack, watching his carefully constructed narrative crumble, pulled out his last desperate card. The baby, he said quietly. Claire's pregnant. It's mine, Darcy. We did a test yesterday before. Everything happened. I'm going to be a father. Doesn't that change anything? A strange calm settled over me. It changes everything, Jack. It means there's absolutely no going back. As if the universe decided this tragedy needed one final act, Jack's phone rang. He answered automatically, putting it on speaker by mistake in his distress. Jack? It's Melissa. Where are you? You said you'd call when you got back from your trip. I've been waiting all day. The voice belonged to a woman none of us recognized. Jack fumbled with the phone, trying to end the call, but it was too late. Who's that? Claire demanded, her face draining of color. Who's Melissa? Jack's panicked expression said everything his voice couldn't. You've got to be kidding me, Nathan muttered, a disbelieving laugh escaping him. The phone continued, unaware of the bomb it had dropped. Call me back, okay? I miss you. Can't wait for our weekend in Seattle next month. Love you. The call ended, leaving an explosive silence in its wake. Claire recovered first. You're seeing someone else? While I'm pregnant with your child? Jack's face contorted through several emotions before settling on defensive anger. It's not serious. Just someone from work. It didn't mean anything. Like I didn't mean anything? Claire's voice rose hysterically. Like Darcy didn't mean anything? How many of us are there, Jack? The question hung in the air, unanswered but revealing. Jack Harrison, master manipulator, had finally been outplayed by his own deceptions. Nathan pulled out his phone. This explains why my investigator found receipts from Portland restaurants on days you were supposedly in Seattle for work. He showed the screen to Claire. There are at least 2 other women he's been seeing regularly over the past year. Different restaurants, different hotels, same pattern. Claire staggered back, as if physically struck. You said I was special, she whispered. You said once we were together officially, it would be different. He said the same thing to me on our wedding day, I told her, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy beneath my anger. And apparently to Melissa, too. Jack stood silently, a man watching his kingdom of lies collapse around him. There would be no clever explanation to save him this time, no gaslighting that could rewrite this reality. I want all of you off my property, I said firmly. Jack, contact Laura about retrieving your personal belongings. Claire, I never want to see you again. Nathan, thank you for your help. I turned and walked back into my house, closing the door on the chaos outside. Through the window, I watched Jack and Claire devolve into a heated argument, their gestures becoming increasingly agitated until Claire slapped him hard across the face before storming to her car. Jack stood alone in my driveway, abandoned by everyone, the architect of his own destruction. Nathan followed me inside, both of us collapsing onto the couch in a state of emotional exhaustion. Well, he said finally, that was illuminating, I suggested. I was going to say a complete shit show, but illuminating works too. Despite everything, we both laughed, a cathartic release of tension that felt like the first step toward healing. We weren't just victims of betrayal anymore. We were survivors, beginning to reclaim our narratives. Later that evening, after Nathan had left and Madeline had gone home to check on her own family, I sat alone in the sudden quiet of my house. Cooper lay at my feet, his steady presence a comfort amid the chaos. The day's events played through my mind like scenes from someone else's life. The desperate 2:47 a.m. text, the confrontation, the revelation of Jack's multiple affairs. It should have been devastating, and part of me was devastated. But another part, a stronger part, recognized this chaos as necessary destruction, clearing the ground for something new to grow. I opened my journal and wrote a single line. Today I lost a husband, but I think I might have found myself. It wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. The divorce would be messy, the emotional aftermath complex. But, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something that had been missing from my life. Possibility. The journey toward freedom had begun with 6 words. It's over then. Goodbye, Jack. Where it would lead, I couldn't yet know. But I was finally walking the path on my own terms. The months following that fateful confrontation passed in a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and emotional processing. Jack didn't make the divorce easy, fighting for assets he had no right to, dragging out proceedings, attempting to hide money that Laura's forensic accountant inevitably found. But he underestimated my determination and the power of irrefutable evidence. The documentation I'd gathered proved invaluable. The forged signature on the mortgage documents, the tracking data showing his whereabouts, the video recording of his phone conversation with Claire, Nathan's additional evidence. Together, they created an airtight case that even Jack's expensive attorney couldn't dismantle. He's offering a settlement, Laura informed me, 4 months into the proceedings. Wants to avoid having the forgery presented in court. I reviewed the terms with clear eyes. Jack would assume the second mortgage entirely. I would keep the house. We would split our legitimate shared assets, minus the money he'd stolen. His retirement account would partially compensate for the emotional damages. Is it fair? I asked Laura. More than fair, she confirmed. You could push for more, but this gives you a clean break and financial security. And it avoids months more of fighting. I signed the papers that afternoon. Not because I forgave Jack, far from it, but because I valued my freedom more than extended vengeance. Every day spent fighting him was another day he occupied space in my life. The settlement allowed me to begin truly moving forward. The community fallout was both better and worse than I'd anticipated. Some friends disappeared, unwilling to take sides in what they viewed as a private matter. Others revealed themselves as secret critics of my marriage, claiming they'd always known Jack was trouble, a retroactive support that rang hollow. But genuine friends emerged too. Sarah from my book club dropped off homemade meals during the worst weeks. My fellow teachers created a protective bubble around me at work, fielding questions from curious parents and giving me space to process. Even some neighbors who had witnessed the dramatic confrontation brought coffee and offered assistance with house repairs Jack had always handled. Most surprising was my evolving relationship with Nathan. We began meeting for occasional coffees, comparing notes on our divorce proceedings, and offering mutual support. Unlike others who grew uncomfortable with my anger or sadness, Nathan understood the complicated emotional landscape I was navigating because he was traversing similar terrain. Claire lost the baby, he told me during one such meeting, 6 months after our marriages imploded. She's claiming it was stress from the divorce, but the doctor said there were other complications. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Whatever my feelings about Claire's betrayal, the loss of a pregnancy deserved compassion. Nathan shrugged, his expression complex. It's better this way. Clean break for everyone. He paused. She's dating someone new already, some guy from her office. And how do you feel about that? Relieved, mostly. Makes it easier to close that chapter completely. He studied me across the table. What about you? Heard anything from Jack? I shook my head. Not directly. Laura says he moved to Seattle, probably to be with Melissa, though who knows how long that will last. The divorce was finalized in late spring, almost exactly 1 year after I'd found the evidence of the second mortgage. I signed the final papers in Laura's office, my hand steady, my mind clear. How does it feel to be officially single again? Laura asked as we shook hands. Like putting down a heavy backpack I've been carrying uphill, I replied. Painful relief. That evening, I walked through my house, our house, now legally mine alone. I'd redecorated gradually over the months, replacing Jack's preferred dark leather furnishings with lighter fabrics, painting walls in colors he'd vetoed, rearranging rooms to suit my preferences. Each change was small, but together they transformed the space from a site of betrayal to a home that reflected my emerging identity. The hardest decision was what to do next. The settlement provided financial stability, but I felt increasingly constrained by the life I'd built around Jack's expectations. Teaching had once been my passion, but years of Jack subtly undermining my career ambitions had dimmed my enthusiasm. The neighborhood, once friendly, now held too many uncomfortable memories. "What do you actually want, Darcy?" Dr. Patterson asked during one of our ongoing therapy sessions. "Not what you think you should want, or what's practical. What lights you up?" The question lingered for weeks, until I remembered a dream I'd abandoned early in my relationship with Jack. Before him, I'd planned to open a children's bookstore, a cozy space combining my love of teaching with my passion for literature. Jack had dismissed the idea as impractical, financially risky, a cute hobby rather than a viable business. "You're a great teacher, babe," he'd said. "Stick with what you're good at. Leave the entrepreneurship to people who understand business." The memory of his condescension sparked something inside me, not just anger, but determination. Why couldn't I open a bookstore? With the house paid off and the settlement providing a financial cushion, the risk was manageable. I had summers off to establish the business, connections with local schools, knowledge of children's literature, and most importantly, a passion that had survived years of suppression. I spent the summer researching business plans, scouting locations, and connecting with publishers. By fall, I had secured a charming storefront in a developing area across town, far from the memories of my old neighborhood. Once Upon a Page would open the following spring, a deadline that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Amidst these transformations came an unexpected encounter. I was leaving a meeting with my small business advisor when I spotted a familiar blonde head at a cafe across the street. Claire sat alone, nursing a coffee, looking significantly different than the polished woman I'd known thinner, her designer clothes replaced by casual jeans and a sweater, her signature perfect makeup minimal. My first instinct was to avoid her, to cross to the other side of the street and pretend I hadn't seen her. But something stopped me. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps the realization that she no longer held power over my emotions. She noticed me before I could decide whether to approach, her eyes widening with recognition. After a moment's hesitation, she raised her hand in a tentative greeting. I crossed the street and stood before her table, neither sitting nor speaking. "Darcy," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. "You look good." "Thank you," I replied neutrally. "How are you, Claire?" She gestured to the chair across from her. After a moment's consideration, I sat down. "I'm managing," she answered, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "Got a new apartment. Started therapy." A pause. "I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually." "Yes, you do," I agreed, not making it easier for her. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "What I did was unforgivable. The affair, the lies, blaming you when everything fell apart. I can't change any of it, but I want you to know I understand how wrong it was." I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to detecting. Instead, I found what appeared to be genuine remorse. "What happened with Jack?" I asked, more curious than invested in her answer. Claire laughed bitterly. "He left for Seattle the day after our confrontation at your house, said he needed space to process everything. I found out later he moved in with Melissa immediately." She shook her head. "I was such a fool. We both were." "No," I corrected her. "I was betrayed. You were a betrayer. That's not the same thing." She flinched but nodded. "You're right. I don't expect forgiveness, Darcy. I've been working on making amends where I can. Part of my recovery." We spoke for 20 minutes more, a strange, raw conversation between two women whose lives had collided so destructively. I didn't offer forgiveness, but I did find something unexpected: compassion. Claire had made terrible choices and hurt people deeply. She was facing the consequences of those choices, as she should. But beneath my lingering anger, I recognized another human struggling to rebuild after catastrophe in her case, one largely of her own making. As I walked away from that unexpected meeting, I realized something profound. The anger I'd carried toward Claire and Jack no longer defined me. It was still there, a part of my story, but it had diminished in size and significance. Where it had once occupied center stage in my emotional landscape, it had become just one element among many others: ambition, creativity, hope, new friendships, growing confidence. The 1-year anniversary of the 2:47 a.m. text arrived on a clear autumn night. Instead of spending it alone, I invited Madeline and a few close friends to my house for dinner. As we sat around the table sharing wine and stories, I realized I was genuinely laughing for the first time in longer than I could remember. "A toast," I said, raising my glass. "To Independence Day." My friends clinked glasses, perhaps not fully understanding the significance of the date, but celebrating my evident happiness nonetheless. Later, after everyone had gone, I sat on my back porch watching the stars. Cooper dozed at my feet, gray now appearing around his muzzle. The past year had transformed both of us in ways I couldn't have imagined on that night when my phone lit up with Jack's desperate text. The renovation of the bookstore was nearly complete, with a grand opening scheduled for spring. I'd given notice at my teaching job, a bittersweet departure from a career I'd loved but had outgrown. My new apartment above the bookstore awaited once the house sold the final severance from the life Jack and I had built together. Most importantly, I'd rebuilt my relationship with myself. The woman who had once shrunk to accommodate her husband's ego now stood firmly in her own power. The woman who had doubted her perceptions now trusted her instincts implicitly. The woman who had feared being alone now relished her hard-won freedom. Had Jack's betrayal been painful? Unquestionably. The divorce, messy and exhausting? Absolutely. The rebuilding, challenging and often frightening? Without a doubt. But sitting there under the vast night sky, I understood with perfect clarity that losing what I thought was perfect had actually set me free. The text that broke my heart had ultimately released me from a life that was slowly suffocating my spirit. The husband who betrayed me had inadvertently given me the push I needed to reclaim dreams long deferred. Sometimes, the end of one story is simply the beginning of a better one. Sometimes, what feels like devastation is actually liberation in disguise. And sometimes, the most important relationship you'll ever have isn't with a partner, but with yourself, with the woman who emerges stronger from betrayal, wiser from pain, and more authentic for having faced the truth, however difficult it might be. Peace, I've learned, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of truth, self, respect, and the courage to stand firmly in both. And yes, in the end, I discovered that peace tastes infinitely better than revenge, a flavor that nourishes the soul rather than temporarily satisfying the ego. So here's my question for you. Has there been a moment in your life when something that seemed like an ending actually became a doorway to something better? When a text, a conversation, or a realization changed everything? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. And if you know someone who might need to hear that betrayal isn't the end of their story, but potentially the beginning of a better one, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to choose peace over revenge, truth over comfort, and yourself over anyone who asks you to be less than you truly are.